Your existence is worthless. I'm confiscating your salary." The newly appointed manager, Mary, said with a laugh. "My salary?" "Yes, that's what I'm saying. I should take the salary of employees who don't work. It's more meaningful that way. I have a wife and children to support. I can endure her rampaging at the company, but not getting my salary is another story. I've worked at this company since I graduated, and the president has been very kind to me. I wanted to continue working here, but I can't work under a tyrannical manager who threatens my salary. In that case, I resign. Thank you for everything up until now." "Oh, you're quitting. That's perfect because we saved the salary we would have paid you." The employees watching the exchange between Manager Mary and me were in an uproar. They must have wondered what would happen to the project if I left. However, without knowing my role, Manager Mary said something unacceptable for a manager. "To protect my family, I could no longer stay at this company. I am Will Miller, 43 years old. I work as a salaryman at an IT company called Thomas Info. This is a small IT company in the local area, involved in system development. Since we also take on subcontracting work, we sometimes had to deal with unreasonable demands from the main contractor. 10 years ago, there were days when we worked overtime until 10 p.m., but recently, with the work style reforms, it's not as harsh as it used to be. At Thomas Info, I have a certain role. It's a very important role, but on the other hand, I'm not much involved in the actual development work. To fulfill my role, I often work outside the office. Therefore, there were days when I worked but didn't come to the office. One day, a new manager was appointed to the development department of Thomas Info, following the retirement of the previous manager. I wondered who would be chosen, and it turned out to be a woman named Mary Wilson, an unfamiliar person from outside the company. She looked to be in her late 30s. "From today, I will be the development manager, Mary Wilson. Nice to meet you. I bet you're all incompetent, but try not to make too much trouble for me." Hearing this arrogant greeting, the employees realized that a troublesome person had come. I was worried about whether the development department would be okay with such a person in charge. A woman nearby whispered to me, "Who is that person?" "She is Nancy Smith, a woman in her 30s who works in the same development department as me." "Well, is she famous in the industry, or did she get the job through family connections?" From what I heard later, it seems that Manager Mary is the daughter of Thomas Info's president's sister, meaning she's the president's niece. So we nodded, thinking she got the job through connections. It was a rather sudden appointment, but in company management, blood relations take priority. Thinking that way, I accepted Manager Mary's promotion as inevitable. It would have been fine if there were no problems afterward. But the development department became chaotic after Manager Mary took over. It turns out Mary had no knowledge of system development at all. Therefore, her instructions were inconsistent and off-target, causing confusion on the ground. "But, Manager Mary, if we do it as you say, the system won't work." "Be quiet. Are you saying you can't follow my orders?" Following Manager Mary's instructions would halt the development process. On the other hand, when I offer advice, she flies into a rage. Of course, her misdeeds don't stop there. She tries to add work on a whim. However, we can't possibly finish the work if it's suddenly increased. "Why isn't this done yet?" "But you just told us yesterday, so it's very..." She doesn't work seriously at all. She shows up just before the start time and leaves right on the dot after causing chaos in the department. Even though all the employees are struggling with the extra work because of her, she doesn't care. If this continues, the employees' frustration will explode and the project will collapse. Feeling this sense of crisis, I spoke to her. "Manager Mary?" "What?" When I called out, Manager Mary looked at me with annoyance. Then she sneered and looked down on me. I was wondering who it was, and it's the useless guy who hardly shows up. Can't you see how much trouble the department is in? It's true that I only come to the office about 3 times a week. However, it's obvious that the confusion in the development department is due to Manager Mary. If things look tough, she should be working overtime instead of just telling others. Swallowing my desire to argue back, I offer my advice as politely as possible. Is there anything you're struggling with in your duties as a manager? If it's okay, I'm here to help. How arrogant. I'm the manager, right? There's nothing I don't understand. Does she not feel the urgency? Or does she feel no responsibility for the chaos in the department? Manager Mary doesn't realize that the project will collapse if things continue like this. Thinking that subtle hints won't work, I decided to be direct. I'm sorry to say this, but many employees are dissatisfied with your current management. Also, the project's progress has significantly fallen behind schedule. What? Manager Mary's heavily made-up face twisted in displeasure. Though I felt intimidated, I pressed on. It's only a matter of time before the employees' frustrations explode. If this continues, the project will collapse, and the company's trust will be damaged. Please, could you listen to our suggestions on how to proceed? The employees around us watched intently as I earnestly conveyed my advice. Hoping that the work environment might improve even a little, they must have expected some change. However, she had no intention of listening to my advice. Acting all high and mighty when you hardly ever show up. Are you out at some hostess club? Unpopular guys are so lame. That's not it at all. I grimaced, wondering why she didn't understand. Instead, I was being accused of not working. Even though I only come to the office about 3 times a week, I work diligently outside on the other days. All of these tasks are things only I can do. It seems she doesn't understand what I do outside, even though she just became the manager. Normally, she should either ask or look at documents to find out, but she doesn't seem interested. I could accept that she suddenly became a manager because she's the president's niece. However, if she's going to disrupt the development site this much, it's a different story. Your existence is worthless. I'm confiscating your salary, she said with a laugh. My salary? Yes, that's what I'm saying. I should take the salary of employees who don't work. It's more meaningful that way. That's a bit too much. What? Do you have a problem with that? There's no way we should pay employees who don't work. I have a wife and children to support. I can endure her rampaging at the company, but not getting my salary is another story. I've worked at this company since I graduated, and the president has been very kind to me. I wanted to continue working here, but I can't work under a tyrannical manager who threatens my salary. In that case, I resign. Thank you for everything up until now. Oh, you're quitting. That's perfect because we saved the salary we would have paid you. Manager Mary smiled and laughed cheerfully. Now that I've decided to quit, I'm no longer afraid of her. Do I need to do a handover? Of course not. You haven't been doing anything, so there's nothing to hand over. Understood. Goodbye. The employees watching the exchange between Manager Mary and me were in an uproar. They must have wondered what would happen to the project if I quit. However, without knowing my role, Manager Mary said something unacceptable for a manager. To protect my family, I could no longer stay at this company. I decided to quit and submitted my resignation letter. I also explained the situation to my wife. She had heard me complain about Manager Mary, and not receiving my salary was a big deal, so she agreed with my decision. Got it? Since you have the chance, why don't you take it easy for a bit? The next time you might have no work could be retirement. Yeah, you're right. I haven't told the kids about my resignation. But if I'm home all the time, they'll wonder what's going on. We have enough savings, but I need to find a new job as soon as possible to support my family. The next day, my phone rang repeatedly. When I checked the caller ID, it was the president. I could guess what it was about. But since I had already resigned, I didn't see the need to answer, so I ignored it. Then, I started getting calls from Manager Mary as well. But she was the one who practically pushed me out. What could she possibly want from me now? With that thought, I continued to ignore the calls for a few more days. The calls from the president and Manager Mary kept coming, but suddenly I received a call from Nancy. She was a colleague I got along with well. Maybe the president or Manager Mary asked her to persuade me. However, I wanted to hear the situation, so I decided to answer the call. Hi, Will. How are you? Hi, how are things at the company? Do you really want to know? It's a total mess. Well, it's the fault of Manager Mary and the president for allowing her behavior, she said with a bitter smile. Nancy had also seen me arguing with Manager Mary, so she probably understood why I resigned. Manager Mary didn't know you were the project manager. Even though you were doing a much more important job than programming, she said you were worthless. That's unbelievable. As a project manager, I managed the ongoing projects within the company. I wasn't in the office much, but I handled crucial tasks like negotiating with clients and reporting progress to ensure the smooth running of projects. I also searched for temporary staff if progress was slow, negotiated the rights for the programs integrated into the systems, and basically did everything that couldn't be done internally. After realizing you were the project manager, Manager Mary tried to take over your work. But she has so little knowledge of system development that the clients are demanding a different person in charge. That figures. Manager Mary keeps adding tasks on a whim, messing up the schedule. We're unsure if the development rights are secure or if we're meeting client requirements. We don't know if what we're doing is correct. Despite the mountain of tasks, we don't know why we're working so hard. It's a nightmare. It's easy to imagine Manager Mary wreaking havoc in the development department. I feel sorry for the remaining employees and clients, but it's all Manager Mary's fault. If they have complaints, they should direct them to her. By the way, after realizing she couldn't handle the project manager's job, she started pushing it onto other employees. But how can the staff on the ground handle project manager tasks? That's typical of Manager Mary. I frowned and gave a bitter smile. She doesn't know how to work, so she yells at others and pushes tasks onto them. It's a common tactic of a bad boss. Finally, President Thomas couldn't stand it anymore and called you Will. Even though she's his niece, he probably couldn't defend her anymore. He must have wanted you to come back. So that's why he was calling so much. President Thomas is the president of Thomas Info. The fact that he kept calling so persistently shows how desperate he was. Manager Mary also called. Either President Thomas told her to, or she was trying to blame you for the chaos. Did you answer? No, I didn't. That's probably for the best. You wouldn't want to deal with any unreasonable accusations. Indeed, I had already resigned and was told that no handover was necessary. So, I no longer have any responsibility for the development department. Contacting them might complicate things further. Then, I asked Nancy something that had been on my mind. Are you okay, Nancy? Oh, I'm fine. Really, you weren't told anything unpleasant? She said a lot of things, but I was really fed up, so I gave it back to her. Nancy is a strong-willed woman. That's why even the male employees can't stand up to her easily. She apparently argued with Manager Mary too. It happened this morning in the chaotic development department. Manager Mary scolded Nancy. You useless fool, don't act like it's none of your business. Do something. Without a project manager, you need to set the schedule. Otherwise, we can't move. We're just employees. Figure out what to do yourself. If you can't even do that, I'll confiscate your salary. Feel free, but if you do, I'll take my pay stub and bank statement to the labor board. At that, Manager Mary was at a loss for words. She realized it would be a big problem if she were reported to the labor board. Then, Manager Mary tried to push some work onto Nancy. Handle this inquiry. This isn't my responsibility, and I don't know the answer. However, thinking it was outside her job scope, Nancy responded calmly. Nancy's constant defiance must have annoyed Manager Mary. You keep whining. It's tough being an incompetent woman, isn't it? The other men agree to do it without a second thought. It doesn't look that way to me. Isn't that what you'd call harassment? A not-so-cute woman acting all high and mighty. Thinking further arguing was a waste of time, Manager Mary left with those words. To think Nancy managed to drive away Manager Mary. Hearing her story, I couldn't help but smile wryly. You're strong, being able to say that much. Really, I just said what needed to be said. Being able to speak her mind like that is rare in this company. That's why Manager Mary had to back down. Are you coming back to the company? I'm considering it. Really? After nearly 20 years of working at this company since I was a new graduate, it's not easy to let go. If the work environment returns to normal, I'd feel more secure going back to Thomas Info than finding a new job. I'd be happy if you came back, Will. What's holding you back? It's Manager Mary. It's obvious that the reason I don't want to return is because of Manager Mary. She will continue to disrupt the development department. I don't want to clean up her messes. Then Nancy spoke with a somewhat pleased tone. I think she might end up quitting. Why are you so sure? She's the president's niece. I don't think she'll be let go so easily. Well, I overheard something. Later, I received another call from President Thomas. Previously, I didn't answer because I didn't want to get involved in any trouble. But now, having heard some of the situation from Nancy, I decided to take the call and listen. I'm really sorry, Will. I never imagined my niece would do something this terrible. What is the current situation at the company? It's a complete mess. The project isn't progressing at all, and the clients are furious. The employees are saying they can't work in such a company anymore. President Thomas sighed deeply. I'm desperately trying to calm the employees who are about to submit their resignation letters. It's really not good, but if this continues, our company will truly go bankrupt. If resignation letters are submitted, the company has to accept them. However, if they do that now, the company won't be able to function. So, he's asking the employees to wait a bit longer. It's like trying to hold back a dam that's about to burst. Then, I asked something that had been on my mind. Why did Manager Mary come to Thomas Info in the first place? Well, we've always had trouble with her, even among our relatives. Really? This was the first time I'd heard that. President Thomas had blindly hired her as a manager because she was family. I thought that was the case, but the reality seemed different. Manager Mary. Mary is my sister's only daughter. My sister married the president of a logistics company named Mary, and she works there as a secretary. Mary was spoiled as the president's only daughter, and that's the result. He was by no means tolerating Manager Mary's selfish behavior. Knowing his true feelings, I felt slightly relieved. Still, I was surprised to learn that Manager Mary was the daughter of another company's president. Knowing this made her spoiled attitude more understandable. Despite slacking off, she somehow graduated from college. However, she couldn't keep a job, changing jobs 6 times until now. She tried dating several times but got dumped every time. Her work and relationships didn't go well, yet her pride remained high, making her unmanageable. I never imagined she had such a complicated history before joining Thomas Info. Knowing this, I could understand why President Thomas hired someone like her. Though I had suffered because of her, I began to feel a bit of sympathy for him, realizing he had his struggles. Originally, she was supposed to work at her parents' company, but she complained that logistics was too dull. She insisted on working at an IT company with a high salary, so I had no choice but to take her in. I hoped it would be a stepping stone for her to participate in society. Surely, President Thomas didn't truly want to hire her as a manager. But as her uncle, he reluctantly accepted his sister and brother-in-law's request. He must have understood the potential impact of making her a manager. Even so, he hired Manager Mary, hoping it would help her step into society. It seems President Thomas's goodwill didn't get through to her. But after this incident, I'm done with her. I talked to my sister and brother-in-law, and he agreed. We no longer have any obligation to spoil her. They tried to support her to help her become independent. But Manager Mary trampled all over their efforts. She had no gratitude towards her supportive relatives, only an endless pride that insisted she was never at fault. I also talked to Nancy, and there are some suspicions about her. We're going to fire Manager Mary, so could you come back? Is it all right for me to return? Yes, in fact, without you, we can't get this place back in order. I'm sorry the situation is such a mess, but with you back, the employees who want to quit might reconsider. In that case, how about these conditions? After thinking for a moment, I made a proposal to President Thomas. He agreed, recognizing the value in it. It was decided that I would work at Thomas Info again. Meanwhile, Manager Mary was notified of her dismissal. To discuss this matter, I went to the president's office. At the same time, Manager Mary was also summoned. Instead of dismissing her outright, he gave her a chance to talk. This might have been President Thomas's last gesture of kindness, hoping she would reflect and find another way to make amends. When Manager Mary entered the room, she frowned upon seeing me. Why is he here? Watch your language. Do you know why you've been called here? Of course, it's absurd that I'm being fired, President. Why? There's nothing absurd about it. You clearly don't understand the state of the development department. Do you have anything to say in your defense? If she had admitted her mistakes here, there might still have been a way out. However, instead of apologizing, Manager Mary responded hysterically. Why am I being fired when I've done nothing wrong? It's because you didn't do the handover properly. She seemed intent on blaming me. But I wasn't going to let her have her way anymore. I offered to do the handover, but you insisted I wasn't working and said a handover wasn't necessary. The current disastrous state of the development department is the result. It's infuriating to recall even now. If you knew things would turn out this way without a handover, you should have said so. This is your negligence. You always blame others. The development department is your responsibility. You should have understood my work properly. Why didn't you know anything? Manager Mary was at a loss for words. She had no understanding of the weight of her role as a manager. She probably thought she could just push her subordinates around and collect a high salary. It's pathetic to rely on someone who has resigned. Didn't you let me go because you could manage without me? Shut up, you say that, but I can sue you for damages for an irresponsible resignation. The project manager left without a handover, causing this mess. You should be the one taking responsibility. I resigned because you said you would confiscate my salary. Demanding that I take responsibility for the project while forcing charity work on me is excessive, isn't it? What? Salary confiscation? I never said that. Manager Mary suddenly played dumb. Of course, she had indeed said she would confiscate my salary. But it seemed inconvenient for her to admit it in front of President Thomas. Naturally, she had no authority to decide salaries. President Thomas seemed exasperated by her behavior. I confronted her with evidence. Don't pretend you don't know. I've recorded all your irresponsible remarks. What? What do you mean? It's for my protection. Your statements change so often. It's too pointless to argue about who said what. Manager Mary never takes responsibility for her words. In such an environment, I couldn't know when I might be falsely accused. To prove my innocence if needed, I secretly recorded our conversations on my phone. Manager Mary turned pale. Unbelievable. A company where conversations are recorded. I don't normally record conversations. You're the first person who made me feel it was necessary to protect myself. If you deny it, I will play your statements here and now. Stop it. Manager Mary desperately tried to stop me. She didn't want her arrogant remarks played in front of President Thomas. If she didn't want the recording played, there was only one option. So, do you admit that you said you would confiscate my salary and that a handover wasn't necessary? I admit it. Cornered and completely defeated, Manager Mary answered weakly. There was no longer any escape from her dismissal. With that in mind, I declared, Manager Mary will be fired, and I will continue to receive the salary you were supposed to get until your retirement. In return, I have promised the President that I will rebuild the project you nearly destroyed. What? Don't be so surprised. Since you haven't been doing any work, it's only fair that your salary is confiscated. Hearing that I would be taking her salary, Manager Mary was left speechless. If it had just been a matter of me getting a raise, she wouldn't have cared. But the fact that I would receive the salary meant for her was infuriating. Don't be ridiculous. You taking my salary, that's... You have no right to refuse. You are being dismissed from Thomas Info. She resisted, but without this arrangement, I wouldn't have had the motivation to fix the project she had already ruined. It would be one thing if it were my responsibility, but why should I have to fix what Manager Mary destroyed? Of course, if the project falls apart, I would only get my original salary. So, for me, it's a highly motivating situation. And there's something else I need to tell you. What is it now? Being fired and having her salary taken by someone she had looked down on was already humiliating enough. What else could there be? Her expression seemed to say, Nancy. Yes. At President Thomas's call, Nancy entered the president's office. It appeared she had been waiting in the hallway all along. I hear you found something. Yes, something that meets your expectations. What is it? What are you talking about? Seeing Nancy with a smile and President Thomas with a stern expression, Manager Mary panicked. I had heard that Nancy and President Thomas were investigating something about Manager Mary. Maybe they finally found something. About a week ago, the security camera caught her stealing a bank book. There's also a mysterious withdrawal of $3,000. You can't talk your way out of this, Manager Mary. What? It was a clumsy attempt at embezzlement, but Manager Mary had stolen company money. If she thought she wouldn't get caught, she had seriously underestimated the situation. So, what my sister said was true. What? Did my mother say something? President Thomas, looking exasperated, replied to the flustered Manager Mary. She said you were taking money from your parents to spend on hosts and buying brand name bags to show off on social media. And when they took measures to stop you, you tried to embezzle from our company instead. Lies, I didn't do that. Then why did you take our company's money without permission? President Thomas's stern words made Manager Mary shrink back. Nancy followed up with more pressure. Embezzling money to spend on hosts. As a fellow woman, I despise you. Shut up. What do you know? A woman like you, who's not even cute, has never been adored by anyone. How pitiful. You said that before, that I'm not cute? Nancy replied, her veins visibly pulsing. When she was previously called unattractive, Nancy held back as an adult should. But inside, she must have been incredibly angry. I already have a husband and children. I've heard your story. But I don't want to hear insults from a woman who gets dumped by men and has to spend big on hosts to get any attention. Nancy's words hit Manager Mary hard, making her face turn bright red. She had lost as both an employee and a woman, leaving her speechless. Seeing Manager Mary at a loss for words, President Thomas spoke. You are fired. We will gather the evidence and report your embezzlement to the police. the police. You don't have to go that far. Embezzlement is a serious crime. A crime? She must have thought it would be easy to get a large amount of money without any consequences. She likely didn't realize that what she did was a crime. But if she takes society so lightly, she needs to relearn the basics. You can't steal someone's money. If you do something wrong, you must apologize. If she doesn't understand even these simple things, she needs to start learning from scratch, even though she's almost 40 years old. You lack basic common sense. You must accept the proper punishment and reform yourself. No way. Manager Mary realized the gravity of her accumulated wrongdoings and collapsed in despair. Reported for occupational embezzlement, Manager Mary was arrested and interrogated. During the investigation, it was revealed that she had also swindled money from men she had dated. Her crimes grew heavier as she was charged with fraud as well. Recognized for the severity of her multiple offenses, she was sentenced to 7 years in prison. In court, she insisted that she was not at fault, but of course, that was not accepted. Everything she had done was legally unacceptable. With a 7-year sentence, perhaps Mary will rethink her attitude towards society. However, by the time she is released, she will likely be in her late 40s. It won't be an age where she can easily start over. Even if she learns common sense now, her future looks bleak. As promised, I continue to work at Thomas Info. If I can revive the project, I will receive the salary that was supposed to be paid to Mary until her retirement. With such an exceptional promise, I'm highly motivated to rebuild the project. My wife was pleased to hear about my re-employment and the possibility of a significant salary increase. Our children didn't seem to notice that I had temporarily resigned. Although I was a bit apprehensive about apologizing to the clients, I sincerely apologized and explained our future plans. We managed to continue doing business with them. 2 weeks after Mary's dismissal, the development department returned to a stable condition. We succeeded in extending the project deadline, and it began to get back on track. I'm glad you're back, Will. Now the project is safe. You're exaggerating, but I'll do my best. The contract the president signed for me indicates how much he expects from me. To meet these expectations, I vowed to make this project a success.